Today, most investors think AI needs three things: chips, data centers, and electricity. But what if I told you one of the AI's newest challenges isn't chips, power, or even networking? It's water. And the solution may come from an industry most investors would never connect to: artificial intelligence. The oil industry. In Texas, companies are exploring whether wastewater produced during oil drilling could eventually be treated and reused to help support artificial intelligence infrastructure. At first, that sounds completely crazy. Oil fields helping artificial intelligence? But once you understand how much water AI actually consumes, you'll realize this story is bigger than it sounds. In fact, it may be another sign that AI infrastructure boom is becoming one of the largest industrial build-outs in modern history. So today we're going to look at why AI suddenly needs enormous amounts of water, why Texas oil companies may become part of the solution, and three stocks investors may want to research if this trend develops further. So let's get started. When ChatGPT exploded onto the scene, investors focused on one thing: NVIDIA. And the thesis was simple: AI needs chips. Buy the companies making the chips. But as the industry evolved, we've learned something very important. AI requires much more than semiconductors. It requires massive data centers. It requires power plants, transformers, optical networking. It requires cooling infrastructure. And every few months, another bottleneck emerges. First, it was GPUs, then electricity, then transformers, then fiber. Now investors are beginning to focus on something else, and that is water. Because without cooling, those expensive AI servers simply cannot operate. And that's creating a challenge few people expected. Artificial intelligence generates an enormous amount of heat. Thousands of GPUs operating around the clock create temperatures that must be controlled constantly. The larger the AI cluster becomes, the more cooling is required. And many cooling systems rely heavily on water. Why? Because water is extremely effective at carrying heat away from equipment. And the challenge is scale. Data centers are becoming bigger every year. Some facilities now require hundreds of megawatts of power, and others are being designed at gigawatt scale. As AI grows, cooling demand grows. And as cooling demand grows, water demand grows as well.
Data centers store and transfer all the digital information we use, which is a lot and growing. So they run very, very hot. The cheapest and most common way to cool them is water, a lot of it.
Water tends to be much cheaper than power. And so it's a pure financial decision for many players.
In just one day, the average data center could use 300,000 gallons of water to cool itself, the same water consumption as 100,000 homes, according to researchers at Virginia Tech, who also estimated that 1 in 5 data centers draws water from stressed watersheds, mostly in the West.
There is, without a doubt, risk if you're dependent on water. These data centers are set up to operate 20 years. So what is it going to look like in 2040 here, right?
That's why.
So Texas has become one of the most attractive places in America for AI infrastructure. The state offers large amounts of land, abundant energy resources, growing infrastructure, and a business-friendly environment. But Texas also faces water challenges. Population growth is increasing demand. Industrial activity is increasing demand. And now AI data centers are adding another layer of demand. And that raises an important question: where will all the water come from? And that's where this story becomes interesting. Everyday oil companies produce enormous amounts of wastewater, and this wastewater is called produced water. Historically, produced water has been viewed as a disposable challenge. Companies spend significant amounts of money managing and handling it.
The Permian Basin is the world's biggest shale oil production basin, and it's really helped to revolutionize the US oil industry and also the US economy over the last 10 years or so. If the Permian was an OPEC member, it would be as big as Iraq and Kuwait combined.
What happens over time is the basin becomes like a layer cake where you have different types of rocks, and then in those basins, oil and gas develop. But the Permian has a water problem.
For every barrel of oil that is produced in the Permian Basin, you also get about 3 to 5 barrels of wastewater. We call it water, but it's pretty toxic stuff. It's as much as 5 times saltier than the ocean. It contains oil and gas residue, and it contains all other manner of heavy metals and sort of radioactive materials.
The vast majority of that water gets re-injected down into the subsurface, and that re-injection changes the pressures and reactivates existing faults. The earthquakes began here, just off of campus. There were a series of mid-magnitude 3 earthquakes.
So the produced water is not just a byproduct of oil. It's actually hindering the land and the state of Texas. So now some researchers and industry groups are asking a different question. What if produced water isn't simply waste? What if it becomes a resource? Could some of it eventually be treated and reused? And could that water potentially support future industrial operations, including AI infrastructure? And that possibility is now being discussed in Texas. And it creates a connection between two industries that most investors would never think about together: oil and AI, or artificial intelligence. So let's simplify the process. As oil wells produce oil, natural gas, and large amounts of wastewater, and that wastewater contains contaminants and cannot simply be used immediately. Instead, it must go through a treatment center and filtration process. If the water can be treated economically and safely, it may be reused for industrial purposes. But the idea being explored is whether some of that treated water could help support cooling systems for future AI infrastructure. But it's still early. But if it proves practical, what was once considered a disposable problem could become a valuable resource. And that changes the economics completely. So you have the oil well, and the oil is extracted from deep underground reservoirs along with the wastewater. The water is naturally brought to the surface along with the oil and gas. Advanced treatment would remove the impurities and contaminants and then store it. You would clean, treat the water, and store it in reliable supply and delivery and storage tanks. And then it would be moved to the AI data centers and used in cooling systems to remove heat from thousands of GPUs. And it keeps AI infrastructure running 24/7 at peak performance. So the positives are the opportunity, new models. The old model is the liability. You have produced water, a disposable well, you put it back into the land. It's expensive. There's no value created. And the waste has to be managed and the cost to be absorbed. The new model is an opportunity where you produce water, the treatment plant, clean water storage, AI data center cooling, and then the AI operations, which creates value. So think about what AI data centers need. They need power, they need land, connectivity, cooling, and water. The Permian Basin already has many of those ingredients: massive energy production, industrial infrastructure, available land, and potentially a significant water source. If produced water reuse becomes practical, West Texas could become far more important to the AI build-out than many investors currently realize. And instead of simply being an oil-producing region, it could become an AI infrastructure region as well. The lesson here isn't necessarily to buy a water stock. The lesson is that AI keeps creating new bottlenecks. A few years ago, nobody worried about AI power demand. Now utilities are scrambling. A few years ago, nobody worried about transformer shortages. Now lead times can stretch for years. A few years ago, nobody worried about AI water demand. Now Texas is exploring oil field wastewater as a possible solution. That tells us something important. AI infrastructure demand appears to be getting larger, not smaller. So if you're looking for 3 publicly traded companies connected to this theme, here are 3 names worth researching. And the first is Tetra Technologies, TTI. Tetra provides water treatment and water management solutions for the energy industry. If produced water becomes increasingly valuable for industrial reuse, Tetra could potentially benefit from greater demand for treatment and recycling solutions. Next is Western Midstream Partners, WES. Western Midstream operates one of the largest produced water infrastructure networks in the Permian Basin. The company owns extensive water gathering, transportation, disposal, and handling assets that are already critical to oil and gas operations. If produced water eventually becomes a more valuable resource for industrial applications, Western Midstream could be one of the companies positioned to the center of the ecosystem. And the third is WTTR, Select Water Solutions. Select Water is another major player in produced water management and recycling infrastructure. The company provides water services across key oil producing regions and could potentially benefit if produced water reuse becomes a larger theme over time. Now, to be clear, these are not direct AI stocks, and I'm not saying any of these companies suddenly becomes the next NVIDIA. The connection between produced water and AI infrastructure is still very early. But if Texas ultimately moves towards large-scale reuse of produced water for industrial cooling and data center applications, and these are 3 companies investors might want to keep on their watch list and research it further. The bigger takeaway remains the same. AI is becoming so resource intensive that entirely new industries are starting to become part of the AI ecosystem. And that's often where investors find opportunities before the broader market catches on. So the first company that we were talking about is Tetra, TTI. It's trading at $10.96 today, June 2nd, 2026, and it's up 5.69%. The price per earnings ratio is high. It's 206.62. Next is Western Midstream Partners. It's $43.57, June 2nd, and it's up under 1% today. And the dividend, it has a dividend of 8.5%, which is good. And the price per earnings ratio is at 14, which is very good. Next is WTTR, Select Water Solutions, and it's up 2.5% today at $18.85. It has a dividend of 1.49%, has a price per earnings ratio, is very high at 92. And let's see if TTI has a dividend. I don't see it. So the most important takeaway from this story isn't water, it's scale. AI has grown so quickly that it is now influencing industries that previously had nothing to do with artificial intelligence. First it was chips, then power, then transformers, then fiber optics, and now it's water. And if history is any guide, another bottleneck is probably already forming somewhere in the system. The investors who identify it early may be the ones who benefit the most. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know in the comments which of these 3 stocks do you think has the most upside if AI produced water infrastructure becomes a larger theme. Also, if you like access to my portfolio updates, research articles, stock watch lists, and members only content, including what's going on with Cybers today, as it's at $10.48, up 57.59% today. We bought it at close to $1.50. Check out the Buy Me a Coffee link description below and join the membership page. Members also get access to many of the visuals and research materials used in these videos, along with weekly portfolio updates and stocks that we are researching next. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.